Hello and welcome again. So this time we're gonna introduce a little bit of the guild house and the parsing. So guild house is accessible if you're into checking out what's your DPS. Will that be good enough? Right now people don't really care that much about your DPS, I would say. They care more about do you have the requirement to meet the gear score for dungeons. So for example, if we go to the raid, which is the end game for current closed beta test, you need the gear score 1710, and that's a lot. You actually need to farm level 50 dungeon, and you actually do need at least one purple or epic item on you for that extra gear score, especially the chest piece or headpiece, because they give the most gear score. So if you have enough items from the blue items, for example, you can see that the difference is 107 and 233. So I'm getting 100 and 120, 115 or so more gear score from just one purple item. But you do, for example, Berserker doesn't have any weapons from the other dungeons, so you are being forced to wear a blue item for that. And the same thing goes with the accessories, but I would recommend doing Tronic's Bunker because it has the most items available there. I would also recommend doing Forgotten Wire for the other pieces.
I'm fine with
but it doesn't have any chests, so that's the sad part. You kind of want to get the either Tronic's Bunker for the chest piece and the helmet, or get the blue shade for the headpiece and the chest piece. That's the highest item you can get, or gear score. Like for example, the chest piece over here is 163 plus 153. That's 316. So if you get the chest piece, that's the overall, you get 688, and that's like the triple amount of gear score that you need, or that you get from upgrading from blue one to the purple one. So and with the helmet, it's roughly 100 plus, which is still better than what you have in comparison with the blue and the purple. So I would say farm for Tronic's Bunker and Blue Shade, either one of them. If you're playing a mage or a priest, you want to go for the Blue Shade because you can have a chance for the weapons. If you're a ranger or archer and heavy gunner, you want to go for the Tronic's Bunker. But as for everyone else, we're getting fucked here. We don't have any equipments that are purple, so we have to rely on trying to get the other stuff before we do the endgame raid. I would recommend also doing Hidden Darkness, but it's not really that important unless you really want to have a specific type of look on your character or stats. But I would recommend getting Bunker or Cave for sure. But as for endgame, you do get items for your class or for your character. You get the weapons as well. So you want to get to 1.7k first, because that's what's most important. You want to get to that, and you can do raid with people or with your guild. So get to 1.7k and then start farming these items instead, because you don't really need any of the level 50 items when you get these, because these are much more better than the blue items or the previous pink items. Anyways, now that we're talking with the gear score and stuff, you do wanna check your guild if you wanna see if your DPS is good enough. Compare with your friends and compare with your guildmates or other party members. Either create your own guild or join a guild and enter their house. And once you've done that, you enter this area. Obviously, if you open up the menu, you get the enter house at the bottom, and don't forget to check in every day for your guild, so you get some guild funds and leveling up the guild. But other than that, enter the guild house, you'll be in this area. So the first thing you see is, oh, it's an open space area, you have some NPCs and such. You can change the emblem and such over here. But this is the important part. These scarecrows, these are dummies. So if you want to parse it, parser, or use the parsing given, you know, check your DPS and such, you can do that over here. But the enemies are level 50. I hope they change that. I guess it's not relevant at low level, but at level 50 it's the level cap for the closed beta. So you do wanna check your DPS in comparison. I think it's gonna be updated with the parser, or there's a raid thing where you parse the raid DPS. But for regular dungeons, you actually have to compare that with your friend, telling them like, what's your total damage at the end of the boss, and such. And you have to reset when you fight the boss, so you don't count in for your for the trash mobs on the way. So to get the parser, you open up your game menu, options, you go to your interface, and you'll have enable personal performance meter. So having this activated, it will pop up over here your total DPS, and you can start to check your DPS. I think that's about it. I don't know if I want to cover up more about the parser and the gear score for the end game. For my build, for example, if you guys are interested in Berserker, if you guys are following me on YouTube or anything, I'm going with the Spin to Win build. My build is Death Spin at max. You want to have most of the skills requirement to unlock certain skills, but you do want to focus on getting the Death Spin, because that's your Spin to Win mobility. You're very mobile, you deal DPS, and you kill enemies really fast. Especially ads and such. But other than that, it gives you sustained DPS there. And the mechanic here is literally I spin to win, and then when I get 10 stacks of my buffs of Dark Aura, I'll use Dark Might. So Dark Might is required me to have Raging Slash 6 and Groundbreaker 6, and I don't use any of these skills. But Dark Might increases your attack speed and your attack by 26%, and you get more SP back as well for 10 seconds. So activating this at the very start, it's going to be on cooldown for 30 seconds, and for those 10 seconds out of 30 seconds, your DPS is going to be really high and fast with that spin. When you spin around, you hit faster, and the faster you do, the more DPS you do. And I combine that afterwards when I get 10 stacks again. This is going to be on cooldown, so I'm going to be using Darkbreaker. And with Darkbreaker, you slash on the ground similar to Groundbreaker, except this one puts a dot on the floor and it uses up your Dark Aura. So once you've done that, this will tick for 5 seconds, and hopefully the boss is standing still, and that's going to be extra DPS for you while you're spinning again over and over. So that's the rotation, literally. You don't have to care that much. You just spin, put the buff on yourself, spin, and then use Darkbreaker and keep spinning. If you're low on health, I'd recommend getting a little bit more on the Bloodlust. I have 5 on it, and that's for sometimes when you do Party Finder and you don't have any priest, you can heal yourself for 23% every 8 seconds, which is quite helpful when you're playing a Berserker, if you don't want to waste too much potions. But if you're trusting in a priest and you have a priest in your party, I would recommend to remove a little bit points of it and spend it on the Deep Wounds. Deep Wounds gives you bleeding damage when you crit. So every time you crit with your Berserker, you put a bleeding effect on them for 10 seconds, and it will tick. And it increases the more you put on the skill level. So for me, I felt like 10% is, a good margin there, and then I have a 23% lifesteal, which makes me survive or being able to do or solo certain dungeons.
If you don't want to fight, walk away.
As for mastery and such, these are only being put to level up, to unlock these skills. you need 6 Great Sword Mastery. You don't really have to care that much about the weapon attack. I would recommend maxing it when we unlock more, or, well, we're gonna have more skills later on in the future. But other than that, Earthquake is the last skill you wanna be using, or last skill that you unlock, and Earthquake is literally an additional dot or DOT, damage over time skill. You place it on the floor when the enemy is standing still, and then you spin to win, and you buff yourself, spin to win, place another dot, spin to win, and your bleed crits or DOT as well. So there's a lot of dots happening here, and there's a lot of sustained DPS while you're being mobile, spinning around. So that's the spin to win build for PvE that I'm planning on using. There are people, you know, that are interested in using Groundbreaker instead. There's another rotation, I guess, as we can speak of. You use Groundbreaker to deal a high damage, but it's a burst damage. It costs a lot of spirit, and you have to refill your spirit to reuse it. It's good for PvP, so that's a recommendation. You want to get to 10 stacks and then ground break the enemy quite often. And of course you do have Blood Price and other skills that you can use for PvP. But for PvE I feel like this is pretty solid for me, because I'm relying on my dots and, you know, sustained DPS while spinning. Something else you want to have in your hotbar is X-slash or cross-slash. It's your moving skill or mobility skill, and you also get immune to knockback and such. So if you know the enemies or boss is facing towards you, you charge through them or charge to the side, or, you know, just to avoid damage while using this, or trying to catch up to the enemy. And the same thing goes with Void Slash. This one uses stamina, so if you're out of stamina, you want to use Void Slash to use your MP instead, and it will dash a fairly amount of distance. So you have to move to a direction and use it, and it will dash a little bit. It doesn't go through the boss, so it's a bit wonky there. You'll have to use the X slash or cross slash instead if you want to go through the boss or target. As you can see here, it only stands still, or you're being struck on impact to the enemy when you use the Void Slash. But yeah, that's about it. I don't think I have anything else to cover. This is gonna be a long video. I know I've been talking a lot, but thanks for watching. Feel free to try out your DPS. There are some options, of course, for the parser. You wanna go for total damage or damage per second. Damage per second doesn't really matter at the moment. You do wanna see how much damage you do in comparison to everyone else in your party. So total damage is what you wanna focus on, unless you wanna have other things such as hit rate, critical rate, see what your percentage is, or damage taken, XP gained, mesos gained, and so on. But, you know, for parsing your DPS, go with total damage instead, and compare with your friends for, let's say, 5 minutes or whatever. Anyways, I'm off, and I hope you find this video a little bit more helpful, and hopefully I see you guys in game.